What's up, guys? Welcome to Bay Area real estate news you can use. I am Adam Dobrinich, local real estate agent here in the Bay Area. This is the one and only President George Morales with Envoy Mortgage. We are here to give you a whole bunch of information about what's happening in the Bay Area real estate market, specifically the East Bay and Contra Costa County, Alameda County. We get asked all the time, is it a good time to buy? Is it a good time to sell? What are interest rates going to do? What should I do about real estate? And so we're here to give you the information that you need, as well as a whole bunch of education and resources. So hopefully you find it useful. Make sure you click that subscribe button and let's get rocking and rolling.
Awesome. So Adam, I know you just had a lot there, and thanks for the amazing introduction, but I'm excited, man, because I know you got some crazy stats maybe that you've come across in the last maybe week or two. And I think this is valuable stuff, right? I think when you're buying a home, the media makes it seem like it's so hard, right? To be able to purchase a home, especially in California or, the Bay Area for that matter. And while it is hard, I think a lot of it is about strategy, right? And one of the beauties that I like about a competitive market like we have here in the Bay Area is that it's all about strategy, right? You got to have the right strategy. You got to have the right agent, the right lender that's going to be able to really think through your situation to be able to put you in a position to win that offer on that purchase, on that home purchase, and get you in the door. So let's kick it off. What's the first thing that's top of mind that you came across maybe in the last week that you think is worth noting?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I dove into the data specifically for Contra Costa County. That's where we're focusing on. This is the market that George and I work in a lot. And the first thing I wanted to understand really was, like, since the beginning of the year, how many homes have sold in Contra Costa County? And the number was 796. And what I really wanted to understand was how many of those are going over asking price versus having price reductions or selling under the asking price. Because one of the things that I get all the time is how hot is this market? Is the market going to crash? Like, what's actually going on? And I think the data really tells us a very interesting story. So like I said, there are about 796 homes that have sold since the beginning of the year. So since January 1st, so let's just call that 800 properties. Right. 522 of them, which is literally 65%, sold at the asking price or above it, which means that 274 of those, so the other 35% went under asking price. And so when people are wondering, is this market crashing? Most of these homes are going over the asking price. It's crazy.
This is 2024, right? First few months of 2024.
First 2 months. Yep.
So this is, back in I think December or maybe I think October of 2023 was like the peak of interest rates, where some lenders even had mortgage rates at like 8%. Most were like 7.75, somewhere thereabout. And there wasn't as many home buyers out on the market, right? And so what started happening is October was kind of the peak, and ever since October, they kind of started trickling down towards November, December, Christmas time, holiday season. And then January hit and they started going up. Actually, people thought that they were going to continue to drop down, but they started going up. So this is, January 2024 till now, when interest rates have still been in the 6 to 7% range now as of the last week or so. That's not low interest rates, right? And so the fact that homes are still going over list price just tells you what the pent-up demand is. And I think people forget, when they think about market crash, they forget about the fact that you can only really have a market crash if there's no demand, right? If there's more homes for sale than people that want to buy them, right? 100%. And right now we're at a point, and I'm sure you can touch on this as well, but there's just not enough homes that are being built or available for sale.
100%. Like, the story here really is inventory. At the end of the day, with low inventory, we definitely have more buyers out there than homes that we have available to sell them. Of all of these properties that we're selling over asking price, and like I said, this was like 520 properties, about 420 of them had multiple offers. And the multiple offer figure on average across all of those properties was 4.9. So just call it 5 offers on these homes. So absolutely a real thing that there are a lot of buyers out there buying at 7%. And I think the thing for people out there that are thinking about buying or wanting to buy, or perhaps they're waiting for interest rates to come down, is again, this demand is at a 7% interest rate.
Right.
How many buyers are on the sidelines right now waiting for those rates to come down? So if you're concerned about, what you're going to pay, or what your interest rate is going to be. Really, from my perspective, the thing that we need to focus on is your payment. Interest rate, I can tell you whatever, your interest rate could be 2%, it could be 20%. Doesn't really matter. It's whether or not you can afford the payment.
Right.
And if you can afford that payment, the reason why it might be important for you to consider buying is that if homes are getting 5 offers right now at 7%, how many offers are these homes going to be getting at 6% or at 5%? So if everybody, is kind of in the camp that interest rates over time are going to go down, more of those buyers that are on the sidelines right now are going to come in, and you're going to be competing against more people.
Right.
What are you actually seeing out there with your clients that are putting in offers, right now? What's working?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a mixed bag. I mean, some of them properties have sat on the market for a little while, and we're the only ones at the negotiation table, right? And that's obviously a good thing for buyers. There are some where there's 3-4 other offers that we're competing with, and it's not crazy competition. It's not 10-15 other offers most of the time. One thing I don't like is when we in the real estate industry talk about, oh my God, this home had over 40-50 offers, and it's like, that's the one home, right, that everyone talks about.
You're on this end of the bell curve or something.
And it's like we don't stop talking about it for like a whole week, and then we just say like, you got to buy a home now because this one had 40 offers. But I'm like, I want to hear about the one that has no offers. I want to hear about the one that has maybe 1 or 2, or the one that's been sitting on the market. Like, you don't talk about that one, right? Why don't you talk about that one? Because I think there's just as much opportunity in those and there is in the ones that, having a ton of offers out there. And so I'm seeing a mixed bag. There's competition, some there isn't. To be honest with you, for me, like as a mortgage lender, and I look at it a little bit differently than you on the real estate side and even the client, because it's all just math for me and it's all numbers, but it's just black and white. How much does the seller want? How much is the buyer willing to pay monthly and cash to close? And can we keep everyone happy? Right. I posted about it on my social recently, or so. 10 out of our last 15 clients have had a seller credit issued to them in a market like this, right? Where we're still, seeing multiple offers on some properties and some we're not, but 10 out of the last 15 are seeing a seller credit. And this is in the last week or two, everyone's saying, oh, no more negotiation for buyers and leverage is back on the seller side. And it's like, well, not really. You just have to work the math and think strategy a little bit, right? Think creatively.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's kind of what comes back to what you were saying earlier, is that the team that you're working with, your lender, your real estate agent, that's very important. It's actually more important than I think a lot of people realize, and it's a big investment that people are making when they're buying a home. Having the right team that can deploy the right strategy given the scenario that the seller is in, like if we're working with the buyer, or on the flip side of that, if you're working with the seller, making sure that you understand the market conditions and price it properly and things along those lines. But at the end of the day, what really matters is getting together with a team that can give you a strategy for that particular house or that particular scenario that's going to help you to win it. Like ultimately, it's at the end of the day, we want to win the house. Right. So,
and one thing, like, again, I mentioned, like, my question to me whenever I hear these things or we're getting ready to submit an offer is, how much does the seller want and how much does our client, are they willing to comfortably pay monthly? We submitted an offer recently and we're getting ready to submit an offer on a property at a certain price point, and I speak to the client's realtor and I'm like, hey, we're submitting at this price point. Is there a reason why we're submitting at this price point? Just want to know, like, what's the background? Okay, well, seller wants to net this much money. Okay, seller wants to net this much money. Here's the thing. If we submit that offer with this purchase price and no credit, no anything, just, that's what the seller wants, the client's not necessarily comfortable with that payment, right? So we could potentially get that accepted, but the client doesn't feel comfortable. So at the end of the day, it doesn't work, right? Like we're probably not going to submit that offer because they're not going to be comfortable with the payments.
Totally.
But here's what we can do. What if we increase the purchase price to this much? And it was like maybe $20,000 more or something like that. And in return, ask for the seller to give us $20,000 back. Now the seller gets whatever money they wanted because they're going to get that money anyways. Exactly. They're netting the same thing net. And the client, I can take that $20,000, Mr. or Mrs. Realtor, and I can play with the numbers. We can use it to buy down interest rate. We can use it to, apply towards closing costs. We can use it towards temporarily or permanent buy downs. There's all kinds of stuff that I can do to get them to the payment that they want, based on their budget and the cash to close. And so I sent a different scenario, 30 minutes later or whatever, I sent the buyer's guide that I usually send to all my clients. And they're like, dude, I can't believe I didn't think about this, right? And
100%.
What ended up happening? Literally sellers got that exact offer almost. They accepted the offer. and buyers happy, sellers happy, and now we're all good, right? So I think there's a lot of strategy behind that, and I think that's like the beauty of like mortgage and why I almost obsess over it sometimes. It's just there's so many moving pieces, and it's just like a big puzzle, and you just have to figure out which piece you want to be able to deploy or implement with this particular scenario.
We have this access to this information, this data, and using that depending upon your scenario to craft a strategy that's going to work really well for an individual or their family, based on what their goals and what their needs are, was really, really important. And that's why, wanted to call out some of these stats so that, depending upon what you're looking for, you may have to pay at or over asking price. You may be competing against an average of 5 offers. But like I said, there's also this other part of the market that is going below. And it's not 5% of homes, it's 30% of homes or 35. There's probably some gems in there, like some really, really great properties in great cities, great neighborhoods, and that kind of thing. And so it's just so important to not let what you're hearing in the media just scare the crap out of you.
Right.
There's no point in doing that. Get a hold of people that can give you information that you can actually use and then devise a strategy to get you where you want to go.
Right.
Real estate is an incredible investment in a long term. And, if you can get yourself into a property, you could be setting yourself up for a fantastic future, because the other thing is, as these rates do trickle down, if that's ultimately what ends up happening with these rates, if you're in a property at that point, you get to ride this wave of equity, because all of these other buyers that are going to be coming in at that point in time with this still low inventory are going to be driving up equity. At least in my opinion, that's really what's going to happen. Because again, we're just kind of coming back to that. This is an inventory problem. And so until that inventory gets sorted out, if you just think about this as like a buying and selling or a supply and demand equation, the supply side is low and the demand side is high, and that, economics 101 means that prices are going to go up.
How does the inventory problem get fixed? Like I've thought about this quite a bit, and I don't know that I'll ever have the answer, and I've never had, but like builders building more, and what's stopping them from doing that?
Well, that's, the interesting part of this is they really can't build enough, and they can't build fast enough across the country. The last data point that I saw was that we're like short 6 million units of property. Like that's a lot. And and when you think about the Bay Area, there's a lot of areas that you can't really build. There's just everything has already been developed unless you go further and further out. Right. And so
we gotta start building up.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? Is so people or these builders are starting to build up.
Interesting.
Exactly. So these condo units that are around mass kind of transit areas, around BART stations and things like that is what we're seeing. But the other side of that, though, is a lot of these that are being built are actually apartments for rent. They're not even like condos or townhomes for sale.
I hear it all the time on social media. Like there's an uproar about that, right? Like builders are building to build, and the wealthier are getting wealthier because they're doing that, and they won't make more homes available for sale, I guess. And it's interesting because I think there's two ways you can look at that, right? You can look at that and throw your hands up in the air and just think, man, like I can never get on the right side of the equation.
Right.
Why is it that the wealthy are doing this? Like that's not fair, and just be unhappy and mad at them, right?
Right.
Or you can think about that builder, that investor at some point in their life probably rented, and then they decided to buy, and then they decided that real estate was a good investment, and then they decided they were going to become a real estate investor.
Totally.
Because they saw the potential in it, right? So for you as someone, if you're someone that's a first-time home buyer, you can get mad about it, and just getting mad about it's not going to change your situation. You're going to continue to rent if you don't make a move. Or you can decide to make a move and say, okay, I'm going to buy my first property, just my first one. It might not be the perfect one, but it'll be my first one.
Key.
I get in the door to home ownership.
Right.
I fix my housing expense, meaning it's not going to increase. Obviously, you still have to pay property taxes. You got to pay, homeowners insurance and that kind of stuff. But your principal and interest, that payment's going to stay the same, right, forever. So you're fighting inflation in a way. But then at some point, you can decide whether or not you want to start building a portfolio. If not, and you only want to own one home for the rest of your life, and that's your primary residence, great, no problem.
It'd be much better to speak about this than I have. But one of the things that the state of California, and it might be more nationwide, but at least I know in the state of California, in order to try to make home ownership easier or more accessible, they kind of reduced the restriction or the down payment restriction on properties up to 4 units.
Correct.
Is that correct? Right?
Yep. So previously, depending on the number of units, when you use conventional financing, you would need anywhere from 15 to 25% down to be able to purchase a property if it's multifamily, 25% or more typically. And now, since I think November, I think is when that new update came out, you can purchase a multifamily residence, 2 to 4 units, rather, as low as 5% down payments.
That's incredible.
Right? Previously, the way to buy a multifamily unit was, or multifamily property was with an FHA loan and 3.5% down if you were limited on your down payment.
Okay.
The downside to that is if you were buying a triplex or a fourplex, so anything above 2 units, so if it was 3 or 4 units, your loan had to pass what's called the self-sufficiency test, which means that all of the rents from the units have to meet the mortgage payment, right? They have to be able to satisfy the full mortgage payments. And sometimes that's tough, right? Like you can't always pass that test. And so sometimes with FHA financing, it became difficult, but now with conventional financing, that requirement is no longer there.
I think, and this is something I've helped some clients out with even recently, is actually their first-time home buyers wanting to get into their first property, and buying a single family home was just sort of out of range for them. But they could go and they could buy a duplex and do it with a small down payment, the 5%, live in one unit, rent out the other. The part of their mortgage is covered, and that helped them to get in there. But that's also that first step, like that you were talking about, to where real estate can then become an investment for you down the road when you're looking to move into your next property or move up into your next property, and that next one is a single family home, for example, and now you have your duplex. You've started to build your portfolio. And so I thought that was something that was absolutely fantastic and game changing for people that really want to buy or get into the market. A single family home is not accessible, or they want to strategically think about the type of property that they want to buy first, meaning like, hey, I'd love to have a portfolio down the future. Start with a 5% duplex or triplex or something like that. You only need that 5% down, and then you go from there. Like that's a great way to get yourself in there and make it more affordable.
Or even like, I know people crap on condos a lot of the times, but like, again, you just got to get your foot in the door. And if it has to be a condo initially, then it has to be a condo, right? Because it's lower price point. I've seen, unfortunately, because of affordability, more and more people are having to be open to that now. But I don't think it's such a bad thing. I think a lot, they get a bad rap, obviously, because of the HOAs, right? You can't always control the management company and the rules and the changes that they make and the fees and the costs and the money that they spend. But if you find a condo with a good HOA and you're reading through their disclosures and their documents and all of that, and it looks like they have a good budget, it looks like they have good finances, that could be an opportunity. I mean, I think an HOA, people also hate having to pay an HOA, right? Because it can be anywhere from $300 to $500 to $1,000 in some cases. But if you buy a single family home, you still got to maintain that front yard, and you got to you're either going to mow that lawn yourself or you're going to pay somebody to mow it for you, right? And so if that's $200 a month, that's an HOA fee that you just don't know it's an HOA fee.
No doubt about it. I always tell clients, I get the stigma with HOAs, but there is some value there. Like with a condo, a lot of times your trash and your water will be covered. You don't have to pay for a homeowner's insurance policy. You're just basically getting a condo policy, which is far less expensive, and you're not paying for the maintenance, right? Like you're contributing to it with your HOA fee by all means. Hit with needing to put a new roof onto a single family home that might cost you $15,000. You don't have to do that with an HOA, and so I think that there are benefits to an HOA, and I do think that they do have a bad rap. And I think you're making a very good point, is like condos are just, again, they're a vehicle for you to own something.
We'll leave it at that, I think, Adam. I think we'll wrap it up for today. We won't go too deep into it or give an overload of information. We hope to do another one of these. Hope that this was valuable for you guys. Hope this was news that you can use, and we're going to come back at you with a ton more information. So make sure that you subscribe, stay tuned, and we'll see you guys on the next one. Have a good night.
Have a good one.